Please introduce yourself and give us your question.
Yeah, hi, I'm Ed Barrowsay with Ulster Solutions. We make meters, among other things. And one of the questions I had was actually, if I can direct it to Sammy in particular, but if all the rest of you have notions, that would be useful as well. I don't really know that much about I know a lot about meter stuff, but I don't know anything at all except how to work an ATM to get cash out of my account on the banking side. So with that in mind, first, one of the questions that you'd asked was, so why meters couldn't have ATM level security in them? So I guess the question for you is, I don't really have any idea how much an outdoor standalone ATM would cost. And then the second part of the question is, if there are specific standards from the banking realm that you think might be useful for people in my industry to study, perhaps as examples, perhaps as things to adopt wholesale, then what would those be?
So two parts of it. From an ATM perspective, they use a device ID called SAM, Security Access Module, which is very similar in a lot of the different implementation. And this SAM will certify to a certain extent that this piece of machine is who it pretends to be. We go back to this root of trust. And to make a meter at the similar level than an ATM is not that complicated. The cost of an ATM, it depends on that market, right? On who is buying it and how much they're willing to pay for it, and if it's like in iron or in different type of because it's protecting money as well, like cash and checks and so on. And we consider as well, when you look at it, that an ATM is in a much more protected environment than a meter, which is outside in the backyard, which typically maybe not a lot of people will come check on it once it's fully automatic. So it's much more vulnerable, or other installations that are really outside. So it's one more reason to use technology to protect it. Added cost, those chips that are used to secure the different devices are in the $2 ranges. So we're not talking about the huge amount of money added into the whole system. You add a lot of security without that, in this case, that prevent really big troubles, much worse than somebody stealing a few dollars out of the bank. We're talking about the safety of people. And to answer your question with regard to what other standards, we recently joined the Open Smart Grid, and we're contributing right now into that specification. It's moving fairly fast, and we're recommending right now, for example, a global platform, which is this is a specification that the bank did write over the last 10 years to enable secure channel between a server in the back end and an endpoint within the chip, and enable them to download code, download keys, upload keys securely. So they have 2 points, end-to-end security. One inside the chip in the device itself, and a library that runs in their secure IT environment, not where they can remotely do these interactions. That's one of the standard that we are promoting the use.
So I'd second just to start watching the Open Smart Grid working groups if you're not doing that already, just because that's where you're going to find where all those other standards are going to come out that you want. Because if you ask the question about financial standards, there's an endless list of standards. It really depends on what topic that you're looking at. They range everything from defining cryptographic protocols at the mathematical level to defining how a tamper-resistant security module should be developed and designed for your back-end office. But if you watch the OpenSG working groups, you'll see all those standards, and you can pick and choose which ones that you want to look deeper into.
I'm going to be a heretic again and say, and actually Sammy mentioned this, so I can use some power analysis techniques to get the private key for my meter. I don't think that's really, in terms of a interesting attack, I don't think that's particularly interesting. Certainly it is from okay, now I rip apart my meter, I build another meter that's just like that one, but reports differently. I think it's, okay, you've got one meter then. So I think the industry is going to have to look at the attacks and say, what things are really important, where do I want to invest? And I'm not saying I wouldn't concern myself with having strong levels of security and cryptography in my endpoints like meters, but I would just say that it's probably more the management of those keys and the head-end side that I'd be much more concerned about, so in the system design.
One last question, and then we'll let you go for your break.
Yes, Keith Martin with Tantalus Systems. We're also a maker of smart grid communication systems. And I just wanted to ask the panel a little bit about this concept of, looking at some of the standards coming from the IT and the banking world. And the question I have basically, it's a broad one, and it's directed at whoever out here might want to take on the answer for it, is a lot of those standards and a lot of those systems are, if you will, connection-based, session-based type networks. And in our world, we're connectionless, stateless, and sessionless. And as a result, I'm just wondering, if there's been any thought to, those are very different types of overall architectures in terms of mitigating availability of service, quality of service. We see very deep swings in terms of amount of data traffic, this kind of stuff. And all that plays into the security framework. And I wondered if there was any consideration being made to try and reconcile what are fundamentally two very different architectures and two different kind of ecosystems.
I think that's true. I certainly didn't mean to say that we can just take the financial standards and apply them to this industry directly. I think that's just a great place to start because there's been a long-standing body of knowledge there that we can learn from, and then we need to adapt them to the realities of this industry. But there are also protocols in the financial industry that are not connection-based, that deal with moving messages across multiple hop networks and then back again. So there's lots of overlap that we can draw from.
I'd actually play it the other way. I mean, aren't IP networks getting much more traction today? And you look at things like the IPSO Alliance and where they're going, aren't the utilities getting much more connection-based? Or what do you have in mind, I guess?
Well, I mean, a good example is a simple one. If you just take a look at a straightforward kind of IP model that we're all familiar with, TCP/IP is a connection-based, session-based interplay.
Right.
UDP.
6V low pan
Right.
is connection-based.
Right. UDP-type methodologies, our UDP methodologies that get used for VoIP technologies and stuff are not connection-based. They're connectionless. So I don't think it's really about whether or not it's I don't think it's a question of IP or IP interoperability. I think it's a question about architecture inside the suite of communication standards that get used.
It's an interesting question. If anybody'd like to tackle it, I'm not sure it's on target for.
Well, I guess I have a couple of comments. So we had a conversation at lunch. I guess I like to throw out the kind of, again, the odd, let's talk about this aspect. But again, the cybersecurity specifications for interoperability. I look at that and say, okay, there are roughly, 15 standards that you're talking about securing? Are they all really the same? I'd say they're probably not. You might want to look at some common cryptographic schemes and say, we're going to choose things that are well understood, primitives that are well understood, key agreement schemes that are well understood and robust, messaging integrity protection schemes that are well understood, and use those. But in each case, in each system that you're designing, I think you want to take a look at what it is you're trying to achieve, what you have to be interoperable with, and design your system for that. Absolutely, you want to reuse well-known protocols and schemes, but I don't think that you want to basically drive yourself into this solution because it works in banking is the right solution, or we have to have one security scheme for the whole smart grid.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That could probably go on for another hour, but we're around for the duration of the conference. That's Jim from Certicom, Chris from SafeNet, Sammy from MXP. I'm Don. Thanks very much. Have a great day.